Hey folks, this is Mike, and it's been a while, quite honestly. I have been sitting on an interview with Steele, and people love Steele, people love to hear about him. In this episode, we talked about professional videography with drones. It was a really interesting conversation. It was a good chat, and I hope that you enjoy it. So I'll talk to you soon. Bye. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I bring to you the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Steele. How are you doing, sir?
Good.
Good.
Just got done working out, sipping on some nutrients.
Yeah, he's got that nice green smoothie. What's in that thing?
Cauliflower rice, blueberries, spinach, chocolate protein powder, chia seeds, and almond milk and some flaxseed.
I feel like your mother would really appreciate that.
She doesn't even drink shit like that. I mean, my body appreciates it. It tastes great. I don't really have.
I bet it does. Yeah, no, I need to eat better, but that's beside the point. So last time we talked, it was about the past, history, whatever. Let's talk about how things are going today. So you've made the jump from what we'll call pro FPV to basically using your FPV skills to shoot real footage for commercials and movies and things like that. How's that going, and what's it like?
Well, it's usually pretty fucking boring.
Is it?
And yeah, I don't enjoy doing it for the most part. So I get offered a lot of jobs. I would say on average anywhere from like 7 to 15 a year. Just depends on the year.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I get offered more, but I usually only take like 3 to 5.
Oh, really?
And the reasoning is because first of all, I don't need to do it because I have other sources of income, and I don't like working for people. So when you're on a shoot like that, like anything, it doesn't even matter if it's like big or it could be for some local dealership up the street or some shit like that. And the problem with it is when someone sees a drone and they want you to come fly your drone in their space and they have an idea, and then I tell them how much like it's going to take to get me there because they want me there, I guess. I mean, they can hire anybody else, but they want me there. Then they're paying the premium for me to be there, which, I mean, to be honest, my day rate's not outrageous for the amount of skill and the time and the competence and all the certifications and everything that I have. But at the same time, like these people, you show up with a toy essentially. Right. And they look at you a little differently when you show up with a toy versus when you show up with an Inspire. I don't care if you're 15 years old and you show up with an Inspire, you're still going to look more professional than me with my little toy,
Yeah.
So typically they try to, they have a certain mentality about what you should be doing to be worth the money that they're paying you. And I don't like that mentality. And I don't think most pilots do, but a lot of people have to put up with it because that's just what you got to do. If it's like your way of life, then you got a boss basically. So I don't like having a boss. So when I'm on a shoot, I act a little differently than most people would because it's like, look, you pay me to be here, but I am the creative on this. Like, you don't understand this. And I make that very clear. Like, I can tell you what you can and can't do. I'm not going to do something that puts my gear or, someone's life in danger because you think it's going to be a good shot. Like, it's very different than they're used to. And I think some people, it rubs them the wrong way. And some people love it. And they like that I take charge over the fact that, the stuff that I do is very specialized. So, again, like I said, I don't enjoy doing it. I charge a lot to do it. The main thing is the travel. Usually when they hear the amount of a day rate, they're like, oh, well, we got to squeeze a 3-day shoot into one day. And they want you to, fly in the night before. They want you to wake up at 5 a.m. They want you to get shots in the morning, maybe. And then all the time people want shots at like noon. It's like, guy, the fucking lighting looks like ass. And you want me to fucking shoot this, multi-million-dollar commercial with probably all the people that they've hired onto this. And you want me to get your money shot at noon? I'm sorry, I don't care what camera you have, it's gonna look like ass. So it's always there's always some bullshit that makes it less cool than it should be. And 90% of the time, the drone work is pushed as a side project. Like, even though they're hiring people to come in and get the shots with the drone, and the drone is a big portion of the shoot, like 99% of the time, it's always like, yeah, we're gonna get this shot, and then when we're done, you can get your shot. And that always ends up happening at sunset, and all the good light gets used up, and I get left with nothing. And then they cry about it, and I'm like, look, you're the one that fucked it up. You
Yeah.
told me to get the shot, and I was ready, and you weren't. So sorry. Here's what I got. I don't care if you hire me again, because this is not my way of life. I enjoy it, but fuck you if you don't want to, get the shot the right way.
What you mentioned that some people love it, and I mean, I can imagine that, if somebody's hiring you, they're hiring you as an expert, not necessarily as just like someone that can run a camera. Or do people see it differently?
It just depends on the person. It depends on, like, I would say most of the jobs that I get are word of mouth. Like, it's like one director talked to another director and was like, hey, I want this guy to shoot this because he's really good to work with on set. And that's another thing. Like, FPV pilots are usually introverts. And I mean, I'm an introvert, but not to the extent that I think a lot of FPV pilots are. So when you get someone on like a set, and you got all these people that are trying to work as a team, and then you got this one person that's used to being by themselves all the time, like, it's a different dynamic of how to interact with that person. And a lot of the times it can be, frustrating for directors, because they're trying to tell this person to do something, and the person's like used to doing shit on their own, and then they like try to do something for the director, and it sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And a lot of the times the chemistry just isn't there, and people don't get hired again because they just sucked on set, basically. Not that the shots were bad. So there's a lot more to it than just flying a drone. Like, I think people don't realize that. And that's kind of why when, people get hired, it's one thing to get hired, and it's one thing to get hired again by the same person. And not 90% of that comes down to how you interacted with people on set. And if you're just, off doing your own thing in your own world, then you're not personable, then people don't want to hang out with you, and they don't want you back on their set, because it's like, it's a whole experience. It's not only getting things done, but it's also like how much fun did you have getting those things done? It makes the time go faster. It makes the shots go faster.
Can you talk about what the coolest shoot you've been on is?
Yes, maybe, if I can think of one.
How about any standouts? We'll say standouts as opposed to coolest.
I mean, they all have their ups and downs. I'm trying to think of one that was just cool the whole time. I think the one that I just posted about recently, the Charlotte, when we flew in Charlotte.
Yeah.
For the
was that the crazy bridge loop, power loop thing that you did?
that was Chicago. That was this year. This was last year's All-Star game for TNT or Turner Broadcasting or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, we went to Charlotte, North Carolina, and had all these permits, and we had, cops galore, blocking streets, and it was a super legit, like, one of the most legit things that I've been on, where they actually shut down streets to get the shots.
Oh, I do remember that. Yeah, I do remember that.
I've been on a lot of shoots where they're like, yeah, just get like air clearance and we'll be great. And then you're just going to fly over all these like things. And I'm like, okay, well, your insurance is, my insurance is here, but okay, whatever. I'll do what you are wanting me to do, as long as it's not putting people that are not involved in the shoot lives at risks. But hey, some of the people during the shoot or that are involved, they're not necessarily in terrible danger, but
right.
you just you're doing things that are a little bit more risky than I think most people would be comfortable with. I don't know. It's not like it's super scary or super dangerous. It's just like, hey, fly this over there, and we're gonna block this street with just a random dude on the
Right.
side. Like we're just gonna have a dude stand out there. It's not like a police officer blocking streets. And
Yeah.
some people don't get permits, and you're like, you have clearance to fly there as far as the air is concerned, but you don't have permits to be there filming per se.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it just depends on the country. It depends on what kind of shoot it is. There's a lot of
Hmm.
guerrilla shit that happens, which is I think the best way to do it if you're going to be a videographer, because to film a lot of this stuff it's just outrageously expensive to hire police to come block streets for you to do like a 4-second shot that you could just do on a Sunday morning or something.
Right.
But Charlotte is particularly special because it is in Class B. Like the entire city is like right under
Hmm.
the airport.
Hmm.
So technically, that one was a little special because we did have all of these permits to do these things. But yeah, that one was fun just because the people involved were really fun, and it was just nonstop fire. Like every day was just fire, fire, fire. So good. Like the shots were amazing, the locations were amazing, the desolate city was crazy. Like you'd show up to a spot at 6 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and there's just like not a soul at anywhere. Not even there'd be like a bus that would drive by every 20 minutes, and that was it.
Hmm.
And that was just cool to be out there with people that we didn't know that we got along with really well, and got cool shots. Usually, it's like you go do something and it's like a shitty shot, and there's a shitty location, and the people you're with are kind of meh, and it's just whatever. They're paying you to be there, but it's just not fun.
Yeah. Now you say we. Do you typically go alone, or is it typically you and other people?
Depends on what they can afford. I'd say most of the time it's me alone, just because they like assign me a spotter.
Hmm.
I ask for one. Usually they don't even realize that you need a visual line of sight
Right.
person. So I usually get some grip that's, kind of knows what's going on. And that's just down to the production being cheap. Like it has really nothing to do with, um, I always have one, but
Yeah.
it's not like your spotter where you actually like if it's a shoot that I'm a little uneasy about, then
Hmm.
I require someone that I know and trust to be there because
Right.
it can be risky or whatnot. This
Yeah.
sounds like I'm doing a bunch of shit against the law, but it's
Well,
really like if we're flying in the woods, they assign me a spotter that's like some random grip. If we're flying in a city, then I bring
yeah.
someone.
Well, I mean, you say it sounds like you're doing a bunch of illegal stuff, but I mean, frankly, you know, everybody in the FPV community has seen y'all fly in Atlanta, right? And I'm not saying that what you do is unsafe.
Mhm.
I very rarely see anything that I think is unsafe, but you definitely have like a rebel persona, and to hear you talk about, oh, I need permits, I need to have clearance in the airspace, I need a spotter, all that kind of stuff. Like I can see there's a whole lot more that goes into it than just walking out on a Saturday or a Sunday and flying an office park.
Used to be that way. You just roll up, roof
Oh,
it, and leave.
is it not that way anymore?
I don't fly that often
Okay.
where I do that by myself, but
Yeah.
I'm not. I'm never psyched enough to go fly like something like that by myself.
Hmm.
That's just not. It's not in the cards anymore.
Yeah.
And to be real, it was never in the cards just because it was terrifying and you wanted to do it with other people. You needed someone to like kind of, egg you on or push you to do something rather
Hmm.
than just going and doing, getting a shot.
Yeah.
There are a few people that I know that fly that, just go out and get shots.
Hmm.
Um, Johnny or Air Blaster, his name's
Hmm.
Johnny too. He's one
Yeah.
of those guys that just goes out and gets shots. Like he enjoys going out and like pushing himself and getting shots and being by himself. But I'm not like that, and I need to have someone around. If it's like, I mean, if it's really cool and I'm on the road and I'm by myself, that's fine. That's a completely different scenario. But if I'm at home and I got access to people that fly and friends, then I'm going to try to get a couple people together and go fly this spot, just because it's more fun with a group rather than going and flying by myself and being in some sketchy, office park where some security dude's going to roll up on me. I think that's another concern. You get kicked out a lot. It's like skateboarding. Or, I mean, not really kicked out, but you get talked to a lot, and you don't want to be just walked up on while you're flying. Even though I can tell someone's coming, and I usually get back in time before they even start talking to me.
Yeah.
It's just a little scary sometimes, depending on where you are.
Yeah, I took my son this weekend to an office park, and I mentioned, I was like, it might happen that security might come talk to us, and it'd be okay if they do. And he was like, "Are we not supposed to do this?" I was like, "It's okay, bud. Like they'll just come and tell us to leave." And Dad, is this illegal?
Yeah,
it was pretty funny. So what are the major differences between just flying with your buddies on any given day versus like being on a set?
Well, it's a hell of a lot easier flying on set than it is to fly with your friends.
Is it?
Yeah, it's easier to fly. It's not easier to coordinate. Like when you go out and fly with people, there's always a frequency coordination that goes on. There's always a struggle, usually, unless you fly with people really regularly. Like John, Kevin, and I always used to fly together, so it was just known that we had our certain channels and we would just be on them constantly. So there was never a confusing moment where like, hey, I don't know what channel I'm on. At the beginning, we'd be like, you're on race 3, you're on race 7, I'm on race 1, we're good. Don't come in with race 3 and race 1 on at the same time near me when I'm flying on race 7. Or everyone's pretty good about frequency management, but like management on a set is more of timing and getting people to cooperate and making the shots happen. So they most people are shitty at timing anyways, and when you put something in the air, it makes it even harder, because most of these timing shots that you're dealing with are like Russian arm shots, and there'll be a dude in a there's like 4 dudes in a Russian arm car. You got a camera guy, you got a focus guy, you got a driver, and you got a spotter, and then you got a person in the stunt car or whatever, and he's chilling back there trying to do whatever, and they'll just be like, hey, maintain 50 miles an hour, stay in the left lane, and we're gonna roll up beside you and get this shot. And they'll kind of brief him on the shot, and then they'll there's a lot of like long continuous shots, so they might have this 20-30 second shot, and they'll take 5 seconds of it if they want, or 2 seconds of it, but they have like 30 seconds of just driving. Where with a mini quad shot, like you're never going to use more than 5 seconds of a mini quad shot. Like no one has ever used more than like 3 to 5 seconds of a mini quad shot in anything other than like an experimental music video. Sure. Like for cinematic stuff, it just so happens that mini quads, they haven't necessarily accepted the GoPro fully. They have accepted the GoPro 8 a little bit more regularly than I think previous GoPros, even though there's not really that big of a difference. But for some reason, because it's a little bit more popular this year, they're kind of like, oh yeah, we can do the GoPro 8. That's cool now. But still, they're not going to like have an establishing James Bond scene open up with a mini quad, like surfing a hillside or something like that. I mean, to give you an example, I think Gab's very first like viral video was him, Gab 707 was like flying up this snowy mountain, and he put some kind of really epic soundtrack to it, and it reminded me of the opening scene to a Bond film. But if they were going to do that with a Bond film, they would have done that with a full-scale helicopter and a giant ass camera on it.
Right.
They would have gotten the exact same shot, just with a helicopter. So you're just not going to see that establishing shots on a mini quad, unless it's just something that's physically impossible, like flying in a city or flying over cars or something like that in a tight place. Or even, like, I think some of the stuff that's going to be utilized in the near future is some of this Dyson stuff, like tiny Beta 85s with like DK's GoPros on them.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to be flying in and out of crap inside very, very small gaps, and just in general indoors flying with those. And because it's GoPro quality, you're going to be able to get some really gnarly stuff. And I think they're going to start using that more and more. I don't know if the Dyson in particular will be the actual airframe, but just like extra small decased GoPros, sub 100 gram, like 4S little brushless quads that can carry a GoPro. I feel like that is, in my mind, the most logical step for cinematic stuff, because it's so versatile. It's not as versatile as a 5-inch, but because it's so small and so harmless, you can just fly it around people. And
Yeah.
you can do something that you might have had to set up like 6 cable cams, and tried to mask all these cuts in shops, and also maybe flying around inside like a bar or inside a room with like a party going on. Like, all of that is completely possible now with those tiny drones. I mean, it was possible before with like a squirt, but I just think it's a little more viable and a little more safe and friendly. It's going to invite more people because it's so tiny. Like if you show up to a shoot and you're flying a feather around, it doesn't matter who you're talking to. The director's gonna be like, "Oh yeah, just fucking ram that into that dude's face. It'll be a cool shot." Where if you're flying a squirt or something, they're gonna be like, "Yeah, that's kind of scary. I don't know. It's really loud and doesn't turn very well. I
Right.
don't think we should fly that near that dude's face." So, in general, it's hard to coordinate, I guess, was the answer to your question.
Well, that actually leads me to a good question. I was going to ask it later, but I'll ask it here, which is, the Cinewhoop thing is it a fad, or do you think it's actually something that is really useful?
Depends on, the fad right now is cinema. Like,
Mm-hmm.
everyone is trying to be this cinema master.
Mm-hmm.
I think that freestyle as a whole has kind of, it still has its huge, there's still a huge following for freestyle. And I find out every time that I post a video how ridiculous it is. Like,
Mm-hmm.
people just want to see me fly. They would rather me post DVR than, spend months editing some gnarly footage.
Right.
Like, I could go out my front yard, not leave the island of trees, and just fly one battery of a 6S quad for like 3 to 5 minutes and post DVR, and it would get 60,000 views. But if I spend like 3 days fucking making some gnarly edit of me going out west and flying all these Joshua trees and like spend all this stupid time rendering real steady, and
Right.
honestly, all of that shit looks terrible because I don't do it often enough to make it, like, I don't spend enough time on it because I don't give a shit about it. It just, to me, it's mediocre always. And
Mm-hmm.
I just post it because I know that if I don't post it, it's never going to get used.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's cool. Some people appreciate it. And there's always going to be the people that are super picky and they're like, "Oh, well, this guy does it better." Well, fuck that guy, because he can't do what I do over here. So at least I'm trying to like diversify a little bit.
Right.
So that I just find it weird that I can post a DVR or a raw shot of me just flying around having fun, and it gets so many more views than shit that I actually spend time on. I mean, I guess I spent time on learning this skill for the last 6 years, and it
Right.
only takes me 3 minutes to make a video. But
Yeah.
still, it's kind of weird when you think about it, how much time it takes to make a raw video versus how much time it takes to make like some cinematic whoop thing or a review video even.
Mm-hmm.
So
So how many, kind of wrapping up this topic, how many folks do you think are actually playing at the level that you are, where it's you have a selection of jobs you can take, they are at least somewhat high caliber, or maybe are all high caliber, I don't know. How many folks do you think have kind of transcended from the, just the random freestyle FPV world into that area
Worldwide or US?
worldwide?
It's probably like 10 to 15
Okay.
worldwide. It's probably 4 in Europe, 2, 3 in Australia, well, 2 in Australia, and maybe 5 here in the States.
Okay.
And a couple in Canada, a couple in Mexico, a couple in South America. I don't know of any in Africa, maybe a couple in South Africa, but
Hmm.
it's pretty, and Asia too. There's guys in Asia that are doing stuff like China and Southeast Asia. So what it is it's not necessarily there's not a huge market because there's only so many people. Like obviously, if I'm only getting, I mean, I get offered a lot of jobs and a lot of them are bullshit. Like I probably get, like I said, anywhere from 7 to 15 offers a year, and I would say at least 3 of those are literally just people like trying to feel you out, see how
Hmm.
cheap they can get you.
Yeah.
They want drone footage, but they don't necessarily have it in the budget, but they're just trying to figure out if they can get it.
Hmm.
And then there's people that are legitimately looking for a specific thing. They want FPV and they want one of the top names to do it. And there are a couple top names out there. Me not being one of them. The only reason I'm one of them is because I have a big YouTube following. It has nothing to do with the fact that, you know, in the cinema space, I'm like the guy to go to.
Hmm.
I mean, it's not like I can't get shots, and I am a lot more professional and a lot more proficient on set than I think a lot of the people that do it regularly are.
Hmm.
However, I just don't enjoy it enough to justify doing it as much to make a name for myself in that space.
Hmm.
I think it's overrated. Like I think cinema in general is overrated, and just that whole lifestyle of traveling to a spot, waking up super early, getting this shot, spending all day eating shitty food on like crafty on set, and then staying up late transferring footage and then waking up and doing it the next day. Like that's just a really hard grind that I don't enjoy, and I don't think a lot of people enjoy it. There's few that are out there, and it really makes a difference when you're with people that you enjoy being around. So if you're on a set and you don't like the people that you're with, it really makes it even more ridiculously hard. So that's kind of why I pick and choose my battles. So if I'm on a shoot, I make sure that it not only pays well, but it has people that I enjoy being around. And it's also a project that I'm interested in. And I'm lucky enough to be able to choose between, what I want and what I don't want. And I think that's another reason why when I do get a job, I can charge extra amount because I've said no to 20 people before them.
Hmm.
So there's something to be said about saying no to people. And I've
Yeah.
learned this with age. Like if you tell
Yeah.
someone no, they're going to want you more. And then if hike up the price, then they're like, oh shit, well, we can't afford that. Well, it's like, yeah, well, okay, find
Yeah.
someone else. And then they're like, we don't want anybody else. And then it just turns into this stupid battle that I don't even want.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, you want what you can't have, right?
Yeah. Well, usually I legitimately don't want it. And they're like, oh no, he's just really good at playing hard to get. I'm like, no, I fucking don't want it.
No, guys, like
Leave me
really,
alone.
leave me alone.
Yeah.
I'm blocking your number now.
Hmm.
So let's move it a little bit to something different. Like
Yeah.
when you're on a shoot, what kind of equipment do you bring with you?
I used to bring a lot. Now I bring 2 quads,
Okay.
10 batteries, and no charger.
What?
Yeah. I don't give a fuck. I roll up with the most minimal shit to get the job done, and then I leave.
So, I mean, under what circumstances would somebody make you bring more than that? Or is that just that's what you do now?
Well, no one wants to pay me for more than a day. And I'm
Ah,
not going to fly more than 10 packs in a day. So there's no
yeah,
reason for me to bring more than 10 packs. And there's no reason for me to bring a charger because it's not like I'm going to charge for the next day.
yeah.
So it's like, if you want to hire me for more than one day, then I might bring a charger. It just depends on the scenario. Like when I went to Charlotte,
Mm-hmm.
um, or not Charlotte. I brought a charger on Charlotte. This has been more of a recent thing where I just bring enough packs. I just assume that this amount of gear is going to get me through because I've been on so many shoots now. I've probably been on 30 shoots, maybe 40 since I started. And my gear that I bring with me has progressively gotten less and less and less over the years. I used to bring 3, 4, 5 quads on a shoot. Like, you know, as many batteries as I could stand packing, probably 10 to 15. They'd all be charged. I'd bring my charger. I would bring, you know, extra goggle battery, extra radio batteries, extra GoPros, extra GoPro batteries. For the last 4 commercial shoots that I've been on, I showed up with 2 quads, 1 GoPro, and 10 batteries.
So, all right. So I got to ask, how much of that, like, confidence comes from the fact that you've just been flying for so long? Like, what is the likelihood on these shoots that you're going to explode, for instance?
Well, if you explode, then you shouldn't be doing shoots. I've never crashed. I've never crashed on any shoots ever, except for 1 shoot. And it's actually these certain people that I crash with. And they're not ever serious crashes. It's like a bounce off of something and then they just fly away.
Yeah.
But it's like this MacGyver, the show, the new show. I mean, it's an old show, but there's a new version of it. Like a reboot. And actually the season that just aired, the intro to the first episode is like the most FPV footage I've ever seen in anything. They used probably 15 seconds of FPV footage in like a 35-second intro, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And all of it was me just running around the city with them in Atlanta getting shots. It was pretty cool.
That sounds fun.
But again, you get on a shoot and people have assumptions of what's possible. And I have to say, no, sorry, that isn't possible. And this is what is. And then they try to shoot at midday. There's always these problems. Anyway, so I'll just, the one crash that I, you know, physically stands out in my mind all the time is they wanted me to transition from outside. Well, I mean, I came up with the shot because what they had in mind was fucking stupid. But I was flying from one parking garage across the street to another parking garage about 5 stories up. And as I go into the second parking garage, so it's a very harshly lit, like this is at probably noon. So it's like dead sun. And I'm going from a really bright environment to a really dark environment because this is a completely enclosed parking garage, except for this one little slit. So I go into the parking garage and then I have a Tacoma that's lifted that barely fits in the parking garage. There's maybe 3 feet of clearance above the bed. And then the roof has like a foot. There's
How
like
did they get it in there?
It barely fit. Like they just squeezed it in there. And then they were like, yeah, we're going to drive this fast. It'll be cool. Like the roof rack was almost scraping when the thing would tilt because it would body roll inside this thing when they were skidding it around. Anyways, they were like, yeah, well, you know, fly inside and this thing will be drifting as you come in. And as it's drifting, go under it. It's like under the tires. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do that, but we'll see. So I go in and there's nowhere for me to go. Like I'm coming at this car. It's sideways. I can't go above it. I might have been able to go above the bed. So I just opted to drop below and go underneath the back of the truck. Yeah. And the GoPro just went poof, like forehead slap on the exhaust because it was so low. And it literally just like slapped the GoPro back flat.
Oh my gosh.
That was the crash. But yeah. And then I've gone on other shoots with them so far away that I just lose video and I just land in some bushes.
Yeah.
I mean, I can kind of see, but I can't see enough to get back. So I'm just like, bush, and just like ditch it. And then some grip runs over there and picks it up, puts it on the ground. I take off and fly back. So, but other than that, I've never, ever had any kind of anything remotely considered a crash. I never change props. That's another thing. I show up with one set of props.
No, man, you're killing me.
One set.
You're killing me.
The last shoot that I went on, I didn't even bring extra props. I just brought one set of props that were on the quad.
Oh my
in the
God.
airport on the outside of the bag, just like getting smashed and like pushed into carry-ons and stuff.
All right. Now, all right. So, now is the reason for that because post processing or the GoPro stabilization is good enough that even if your props get chewed up, it doesn't matter? Or you just never get your props chewed up?
The chance of chewing up props is like so slim that it just doesn't even matter.
Okay.
Even if you do chew something up, it's not like it's going to be bad enough to where you can't just bend it back and like check the tracking of the blades and make sure they're straight, and then it's going to be fine.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, usually I don't bring anything, just batteries and a quad. And the secondary quad is usually not even set up to accommodate whatever camera I'm using for that shoot. So recently I've been shooting with the Hero 8, and it has a certain way that it's mounted. And then I have another quad that's got a foam wedge on it, which is not a way that you can mount a Hero 8. So like I would have to physically take things apart and put that 3D print onto the quad and then switch things over to get it to work correctly. I have since built 2 cinema quads that are specifically for shoots that I will not fly unless they're for shoots. But that was like literally just recently, and I haven't flown them yet. I just built them. I'm going to take them apart and conformal coat them and like go pretty hardcore on it so I can fly in snow, because that was a problem when I went on a shoot in Chicago a few months ago. I got on set. I had a prototype ESC on a prototype ESC, prototype flight controller on a quad that I was like pretty competent in. Like I had been flying it for like 3 months and there was no issues with it.
Yeah.
And this is like FetTech stuff. And I was flying a prototype ESC, prototype flight controller, and I hadn't noticed anything weird. Anyways, it was on my bag and it was snowing. And I guess at some point some snow had like gotten on the flight controller or something. And I just plugged it in and one of the motors wouldn't spin up. It didn't pop or anything. Just one of the motors didn't spin. And I was like, what the fuck? So it was like negative super degrees out too. So I went back to the car and took all the shit off and put it back onto my my KISS Freestyle rig that I've been flying for forever.
Yeah.
And anyways, I ended up flying that one. I had one quad and I flew that the entire 3-day shoot and no issues whatsoever in super cold weather, and it was snowing. Yeah.
So what? Tell me about what equipment is on these cinema rigs?
Exact shit that I run on my Freestyle rigs, except the only difference is, so I'm running. I might just give you a rundown of what I typically run. So I have an Apex with the Mr Steele OSD and regulator board on it. Then I'm running a KISS 25 amp 4-in-1 that does do 6S because that's all I fly. I'm running a KISS V2 flight controller. I'm running a Unify 5-volt video transmitter, mainly because of the size. It fits under there really well, and it does 800 milliwatts, and I've never had a problem with it, and it's super simplistic, so I enjoy the simplicity of it. I don't need to change channels because I'm always on the same channel because I fly by myself a lot, and if I fly with friends, they usually can change channels, so it's just like whatever. I'm on race 6. I can toggle if I need to, but it's all like manually done with the button.
Yeah.
And then I'm running the Run Cam, like Mr Steele version. That's basically something I've been prototyping for a while. It's a mini cam with a larger lens. It's got the GoPro 2.5 mil lens on it.
Oh, cool.
Which is my favorite lens. I've had that lens ever since Luke Bannister showed me that they were cheating because that lens is so good, like 5 years ago or 4 years ago or some shit. I remember like being in a park in California for the DR1 racing thing.
Yeah.
And Luke and it's Gary, Luke and Gary, they were like the 2 British guys, and they were like off to the side, like flying by themselves. And I walked over there. I was like, "What are you guys doing?" They're like, "Oh, just practicing." And then Luke goes, "Hey, check this out. Put on your goggles." And I was like, he didn't even have to tell me what was going on. I was like, "What is this lens? It looks like I'm watching HD or something." And he's like, it's it's something special. It's a GoPro 2 lens. And I immediately bought 14 on Amazon. They were like $10 a piece, which is like $140 of lenses. And that's been my favorite lens ever since. Yeah. So that one, then I'm running the Mr Steele 1750 kV 2306 Ethics Mr Steele motors, and then the S3s and a Unify and a Triumph two or Triumph Pro, like the mini, and then a
Hmm.
Crossfire single nano
Hmm.
receiver, and that's it. And that's the setup that I run all the time.
Do you run when you're on a cinema shoot? Do you run a low tilt on the GoPro?
Um, for car stuff, no. I run like
Okay.
20 degrees on the GoPro and about 25 for my thing. For my,
Hmm.
I usually run less than my GoPro or less than my FPV camera, mainly
Hmm.
because it's better to look at more of the ground on a car than it is to look at more of the sky.
Okay.
So it's better to have less tilt, but it is also not good to have zero tilt because then you end up just looking at the
Just
ground.
looking at.
So you got to kind of compensate a little bit. Where drifting, I just run 25 all the time because I want it to be exactly what and there's a lot of speed change.
Hmm.
They're going from, 80 to 30 to 70, and then, they might pull off at 50 miles an hour or something like that. So there's a lot of speed change, but usually with car stuff, like commercials, it's always super chill, like under 40 miles an hour, under 50 miles an hour. So I just run like 10 to 15, 20 degrees of GoPro and like same roughly on FPV, maybe 25 if I'm feeling real lazy and I don't want to change it. But a lot of stuff I just run 25 because it's what I'm used to.
Hmm. What about like, okay, so let's take a step back. Let's say that, someone's decent, they're good. And they are considering getting their Part 107. Would you recommend that folks go ahead and get it?
I mean, it depends on what they're trying to do. It
I
depends
mean,
if they're trying
yeah.
to make a career out of flying drones or if they just want to do it for fun. I mean, I think in general, FPV is a very viable source of doing something.
Mhm.
If you're talented at anything, you should at least ponder the idea of possibly making some money at doing it.
Yeah.
Unless you just genuinely enjoy it and you have no way that you want to adulterate the fact that you enjoy something. Like
Yeah.
if I want to, rock climbing for me, I've tried to make money at it. I used to teach rock climbing and it was fun. But, at the end of the day, like I have nobody telling me to do anything other than myself at the end of the day. So it's not like someone's telling me to be somewhere or I'm not going to be able to climb. It's all
Mhm.
me like, hey, I want to climb, so I'm going to go do it. The same thing goes with FPV. And I found that depending on what you're doing, if you don't, if you're not truly passionate about something and you try to make money on it, you're eventually going to get burned out on it.
Mhm.
Like not necessarily to the point where you'll quit, but it just depends on how much of a relationship you have with that hobby before you start trying to make money at it. It's kind of like dating or something. Like if you just met
Mhm.
some chick and you all of a sudden get married and you don't know her very well, there's probably a good chance you're going to get divorced. Where if you've been dating for like 10 years and then all of a sudden you get married, there's probably a lot better of a chance that you're going to stay together for longer.
Mhm.
Where FPV is similar. If you build a good foundation with FPV and it's something you genuinely love to do, and then you have some rough times when you're trying to make money with it, then you're probably not going to be like, oh, fuck this, I'm never doing this again.
Right.
Where if you just get into FPV because you're like, I'm going to make money, and then you realize how hard it is to actually make money with something like this, like
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
legitimate
Oh yeah.
like income, not just like, oh, I made a couple grand last year flying FPV. Like
Right.
that's
No.
easy. Anybody can do
No.
that.
Yeah.
But making like a legitimate career, like a 6-figure career flying FPV,
Yes.
it requires a hell of a lot of work and a lot of time, and you're just not going to do it overnight. It's going to take you years to get into that kind of scenario, and it's a lot of luck. It's a lot of persistence and a lot of luck.
Mhm.
So
That. So this is actually a complete left-hand turn. You mentioned burnout. Do you think you've ever burn out?
I burn out pretty frequently on a lot of
Do you?
things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, specifically FPV. Has there ever been a time that you were just like, set it down for a couple months or 6 months or whatever?
I do that now. I would say the last year, I've been kind of not burnout, but just I'm not as motivated to go out and fly I mean, I've been doing it 6 years now,
Yeah.
7 years almost, 6 years since 2014.
Hmm.
So, I mean, if you go back and watch my videos, I was like hardcore into it for like 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
It was just wake up, I'm going to fly, and then you fly. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing else in my life going on. And I'm not going to say that I don't wake up and think about flying, but it's just not my priority in a day.
Mm-hmm.
Like to me, like personal health is first, and then whatever I'm going to eat. Like, am I going to work out? Am I going to eat? Am I going to learn something? I always try to learn something every single day, regardless of what it is, whether it's like intentional or not. Like usually it's about cars. I'm extremely interested in automotive sports, not in sports per se, but in just technology from the automotive community.
Mm-hmm.
So I really enjoy learning about like engineering. So to me, it's not that I don't want to fly. It's just that's not a priority of mine to fly every day.
Yeah, you've reprioritized.
And I find out that if you don't fly every day, you get better, which is the strangest thing ever.
Dude, I've seen the same thing. Like, I mean, you know, not that I'm like some kind of spectacular pilot, but I'll take like a month or two off, and then I'll go back, and all of a sudden I'm like, damn, I don't remember being able to do this before.
Yeah, I think your brain like recalculates how to work, and it just makes things super simple. It literally just focuses you on the only thing I need to do is stay in the air. It's you're not like concentrating on how much throttle am I inputting here? What is my like how sketchy is this, or you know, how much am I doing that I don't like? Because usually when I end up flying too much is when I start over analyzing everything, and my flights become a little less flow oriented, and they become more just more trick oriented, and then I get really fed up on certain tricks. I'll get hung up on certain tricks, and I want to do that trick through everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's never perfect. Like I used to do Rubik's cubes a shitload. I still enjoy doing them a lot, but I would get to the point where if it wasn't perfectly flat and I wasn't doing a perfect roll and perfectly stopping and then pulling out perfectly, then I would like be frustrated, and I would just have to do it over and over and over and over and over till I got it perfectly. And now I've kind of learned that I have more fun basically just full speed everywhere and just avoiding things and making it look like I didn't mean to do that, or making it look like I meant to do it.
Right. Yeah.
You're just like in a space and you're turning into a fucking like Donnie from Wild Thornberries, and you're just like like going around and ripping, and then you somehow make it look like you meant to do all of that. Because I have no plan when I go into a freestyle flight. I'm not like, oh, I'm gonna take off, I'm gonna do a flip over that, and then I'm gonna go down here and do that. It's just like, oh, obstacle, new obstacle, and you're just like doing new shit all the time, and that's what I think is fun.
I'm pretty certain that I've heard you make that noise while you were flying in one of your
if I haven't, the drone definitely has.
Well, I mean, you know, I don't think I expected that Steele was basically saying, I'm not the best, number one, which I thought was pretty intriguing. And I also didn't expect for him to say that it's not something he really enjoys. But I get it. Like, there's a freedom and an aspect to flight that probably doesn't get translated into a movie setting. It's not like you get, you know, he goes back to talking about, I am the creative. And as the guy that makes these videos, and as the guy that flies my own flights and makes my own edits, I actually get that. Because you know what you're good at, and you know what looks good, and you know what works for you, and these directors and other people may not. So there's actually going to be 2 more parts of this coming out. I honestly don't know when. I would like to get them edited and put out. One of them is super exciting because I'll give you a teaser. I got Steele to play guitar, and damn, he's good. So anyways, look forward to those, and I hope that you all are good. It's crazy times, and I'll see you soon. Bye.